Hello and welcome to Two Girls in a Pod. I am Sharon.
I'm Christy.
Welcome, everybody. I'm doing a little bit of reading.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, maybe a lot of reading.
Yeah.
And some of the stuff you're reading has been really fascinating because we're talking about, oftentimes we talk about our mindset and how our mindset really gets in the way of a lot of things that we're doing.
Mm-hmm. And also the opinions of others.
Oh, yeah, we got to do those too.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, so we're going to start with you actually reading a little segment of this book that you've been reading, which I find fascinating. We're going to talk a little bit why it's so fascinating after we read the segment.
Yeah. So let us examine some of the symptoms of the fear of criticism. The majority of people permit relatives, friends, and the public at large to so influence them that they cannot live their own lives because they fear criticism. Huge numbers of people make mistakes in marriage, stand by the bargain, and go through life miserable and unhappy because they fear criticism, which may follow if they correct the mistake. Anyone who has submitted to this form of fear knows the irreparable damage it does by destroying ambition, self-reliance, and the desire to achieve. Millions of people neglect to acquire belated education after having left school because they fear criticism. Countless numbers of men and women, both young and old, permit relatives to wreck their lives in the name of duty because they fear criticism. Duty does not require any person to submit to the destruction of his personal ambitions and the right to live his own life in his own way. People refuse to take chances in business because they fear the criticism which may follow if they fail. The fear of criticism in such cases is stronger than the desire for success. Too many people refuse to set high goals for themselves or even neglect selecting a career because they fear the criticism of relatives and friends who may say, "Don't aim so high. People will think you're crazy."
Wow. And how powerful is that? When we look at the things that we let get in the way of us reaching our goals.
Yeah. I found that section to be really interesting because I think that so many times the voices of others are so loud in our head that it does keep us from pursuing those things that we may be passionate about or that we would like to learn about to even know if that passion is something we want to pursue.
And I think that's really the interesting piece of it is that we will have all of these ideas, these passions, these desires. And how many of us will put those on the back burner simply because of those thoughts that we have about how other people are going to perceive us in these endeavors.
Mm-hmm.
And the part that I find fascinating is this book was written
Back in the 1930s. So the name of this book is Think and Grow Rich, and it is by Napoleon Hill. And it was written in the 1930s, right after the Great Depression. And he's talking about all of the change that happened in that time and how people's mindsets have changed. So it's really interesting to be reading this book in this time, in our political climate and all of the changes, especially right after an election and those kind of things. So it's just been really fascinating.
Well, I think the things that's fascinating about it is to realize that something that was going on in 1930 is still going on in 2024.
Yeah.
There's not this huge difference in it.
Mm-hmm.
But somehow we get this idea that if it was done in the 1930s, well, it's obsolete now.
Mm-hmm.
Well, guess what, people? The ideas of people continue. It's generational. We just keep pushing that crap
Mm-hmm.
onto the next generation and then the next. And it becomes that place of where do we stop that in order to help this younger generation to propel to those things that are even greater and greater.
Mm-hmm.
There's such growth in it.
There is. And I think that once you're able to identify how much of that is holding you back because you adhere to that line of thinking those fears. I mean, fear is a huge thing. And I think that when you look at it, it's really sad that a lot of people won't pursue whatever it is that they dream of doing because of that.
We have a friend who has her own business, Alicia, at what is her? It's
Frostbit.
Frostbit. And
Mhm.
we had her on, and even like with her, she talked about that thing of having, you have to have this determination.
Mhm.
You have to say, forget it, just F it. I'm going to go do it no matter what. Later on, she's talking about the fact that, here she is on this endeavor and how much we don't get the support of our family and our friends or our group.
Mhm.
And then it's like, how do you help is it because of that internal is it those thoughts that they're not encouraging and supporting that? Is it part of that thinking? Do you know what I mean?
I think that that is a part of it. I think that also because so many people lack that belief in themselves. So you have that fear to start with, and then maybe the idea isn't the conventional way. And so then you're afraid of what other people are going to say.
And it is so crazy to me because when we look at all of these inventions we have, it was those people who stepped outside the box and said, I don't care if you think I'm crazy. How many people really probably thought Nikola Tesla was just crazy?
And look how much we use his technology today.
He was brilliant,
Yeah.
just brilliant.
Mhm.
But those are the things that we're talking about is how we allow these things to get in the way of our mindset and that mindset that's going to propel us to that next thing that's really relevant and important to us.
Mhm. And it's interesting because I think that once you're willing to take the chance on that, sometimes maybe it's not the end goal that you think it's going to be at the beginning, but it morphs and changes. You are able to define it more as you go.
I haven't thought about that. When we did the Grateful Beginnings coloring book collection, we didn't tell anybody about it.
Mhm.
I think it was one of those things is, are people going to say, well, why would you do that? Or what's that all about? And sometimes I think it may be even those little tiny comments that starts that self-doubt in people.
I think it's interesting because beforehand I didn't think about telling anybody about it, not because I don't feel like it was a fear of criticism of that. I kind of felt that after it was put out there. Like, what will they think or whatever? Will they grasp the idea? Does it make any sense or that kind of thing? And I mean, there's still some of that at times. But I think prior to actually producing the books and that having them come out, it wasn't a matter of sharing because I was, fearful of criticism. I just wanted it to be already in place. I wanted it to have already come to fruition. This isn't something that I'm planning and then procrastinating and not doing. I wanted them to see it after it was already completed.
But then that you had the thought of after it's out there,
Yeah.
now people are
Now it's out there for everybody to see. I wonder, how will it be received?
Well, I think even when we started the podcast, it was the same thing. We didn't tell anybody. We just did it. And part of that was, what are we gonna I don't know.
That, I would say, had more to do with maybe the fear of criticism prior to that, because I was even so critical of myself. And a lot of times that's what it comes down to, I think. We're so critical of ourselves, and that's what it was for me. I thought, "Man, how do I put myself out there and talk? Because 'Cause I'm not used to that." I mean, if I was enrolled in a class that had a speech that we had to give somewhere throughout the course, I was out. I'm like, "Nope, I'm withdrawing."
It's funny because even with that, we talked about that. I have given presentations at conferences. I have given presentations on different topics. I'm fine with that. But for some reason, I think it's because this reaches different people. I know my audience there. And in my head, that's what it was. I know my audience. I know exactly what I'm doing. I know what I'm supposed to present, all of that. So there's a comfort in that. This was so foreign and different to us. And then here we are, what, 3 years later, and we're still in here. We're still doing it. We're still changing it up. We're still learning and growing. And I mean, I think those are the things that are important is to continue that growth and development in whatever we're doing. When he's talking about this, and you think about when he wrote this book in the 1930s, all of those people who allowed the influence of other people's ideas, all of the stuff that we do not know about today, because those people became afraid.
Mm-hmm.
And so they didn't do it. They were afraid of that criticism or that judgment. And how many times do you hear that? Well, that's an awfully big goal, or that's a little outside, which, I mean, just
Mm-hmm.
all that continuous chatter.
Especially if it seems out of context for them. They don't understand, if they don't know what your inner desire is to what you want to bring to fruition, and you just come at them with this idea that seems so outside of your wheelhouse, they're going to look at you like you're crazy and you don't want to experience that. But how important it is to take that chance, because a lot of times I think when you are willing and able to move through that fear is when you are brought to a place of clarity and to a place of being able to pursue the best parts.
Well, I think it's interesting when we look at fear and we see that fear of criticism, fear of judgment, fear of all of those things is greater than our fear of self, our greater than our fear of reaching goals, of
Mhm.
being happy, of all of those things. That fear of that criticism from the people that we love. Because in essence, what it is, people believe that if you love me, you're going to support me. And then when that comes from that group, it can be very damaging in some ways.
Mhm.
And then, so when you have it, and then it's, well, okay, now I have this, what do I do? I think the thing we do is we learn to shut down that stuff, and we've talked about that, being mindful, identifying it as the faulty thinking that it is, realizing that somebody else's idea of their version of their truth of you, but it's not yours, having that internal dialogue. But then I think the next thing is, and he talks about that later on in the book, is creating that circle,
Yeah, he says about how important that piece is.
gravitate to those people who are like minded.
Yeah, and the reason being, like, he gives many examples throughout the book of people that made fortunes through their craft, even though they did not have every piece of information. They did not know how to bring these things to fruition without the help of other people. They had to build a community of people to help them advance to the place that they needed to be.
When we look at us, we look at with the Grateful Beginnings coloring book collection, our illustrator Othmain did an amazing job, and we couldn't have done that without him.
Right.
When we look at our podcast, our editor Raymond Joseph has been doing our podcast editing this entire time and has done this fantastic job and has always been available. And so really want to give a shout out to both of those two,
Yes,
because it's the
absolutely.
behind the scenes stuff that people do not see.
Exactly. Pew, pew, pew. There's
Very
a
good.
shout out.
But those things are important, and it's the people that we meet along the way. All the people that said yes to interviews with us. You go and you find those people willing to share those stories and things. And when they do that too, they're putting themselves out there for everybody to hear their ideas, their thoughts, and disagree or agree or whatever. And we went down to the roll up a few days ago, and that was really great because we got to hang out with Bryce, and he told us a little bit more about how the roll up is coming along. And keeping in touch with those people is really important.
Yeah.
So shout out to the roll up and Bryce too, that he's doing fantastic, and things like that. And those are the things that are important.
Yes.
Creating that circle and then staying true to that circle. You know what I mean?
Yes. Because it expands your reach. When you're able to support each other on that level, it expands what you can do.
100%. And these are the things, and when we're talking about this on the podcast and we're saying to people, we really do need your subscription. You have to subscribe, you have to like, you have to follow. That's all part of the success of what we do. Without it, we just kind of stay at a certain level, which is okay too. But the thing is, when you're trying to build these things, those things are so important.
Mhm.
And for everybody who already does follow, subscribe, and that, thank you, thank you, thank you.
Yes.
It is so important to the growth and development of what we do. And to our coaching clients, thank you, thank you, thank you for entrusting that we're going to help you get to that next level of what it is that you want.
And I think that the more that you can do that, you can build that confidence within yourself that allows you to move beyond that fear of criticism from others.
And y'all remember, fear and faith take the same time and energy in your body, in here. It's in your head.
Mhm.
It all sits in your head. And what you feed is what it's going to do. And if you switch the fear to faith in you, and sometimes it is, you just take that leap of faith and you just go do it
Mhm.
because you don't know the amount of success it can have or can't have. It's kind of like if you're looking across the room, you like that girl, you like that guy, and you're there like, oh no, they're out of my league. I'm not going to do that. You missed an opportunity
Yeah.
because you don't know what their league is. You make an assumption. And then if you're that one who says, you know what, I'm going to do it. And they go, they do it, and they have this wonderful experience.
Yeah.
But fear is, oh my goodness, it is such a crippling, detrimental thing to us.
Mhm. And it can be in any aspect of your life. I mean, even how he talks about people sometimes will enter into marriages and things like that and then stay in those situations and they're unhappy and trying to live their best life that way makes it difficult.
And I think when you're looking at the 1930s, especially around marriage, that really in the 1930s for a woman, marriage was it.
Yeah.
If you didn't have a marriage, then I don't know what you were doing.
Right.
You were kind of looked at sideways or whatever, and that became your role. And do you think the women in the 1930s weren't having these brilliant ideas and wanting to do stuff? Of course they were, but their fear of what society's norms were at that time kept, and societal norms keep people in a box.
Mhm.
And you have to be willing to step outside of those societal norms. And the reason why is because when if enough people step out those societal norms, guess what? We get a new norm. They morph with us as we expand and change.
Mhm. It's interesting because there in this book, there's a woman that he gives the story of her son went to college, and when he got out of college, him trying to find a position, and she made it her mission to where that she's basically like this person that came up with the whole format thing of like a resume type of thing and really selling your skills. She made it her mission to do that for her son so that he could start at a higher wage than even just entry level. And it ended up doing so well that she ended up making a whole business out of it. That there were she ended up eventually having employees that they would type up stuff and really help sell the skills of these people and get them employed. It was like the first, like, employment type agency thing.
But even in that, there's such a weird fine line there, even. So even when people are doing their resumes, well, should I put that down? Well, am I bragging? Am I boasting? You start going into this really weird headspace.
Yeah.
Even when you're trying to sell yourself, it's like, well, I can't say that sounds kind of vain, or I can't do that. That sounds like I'm boasting. That sounds like I'm overconfident.
Well,
Thoughts go into your head when you're doing stuff like that.
I think that is true, and I know that's something that I struggle with even for myself. I mean, we were talking about that the other day. I mean, when you're trying to do something and you feel like you're really trying to sell yourself and the skills that you have and that. And for me, I don't always think of it, like, oh, I'm bragging or whatever if I say those things. I just don't even think of them. I don't see them as the assets that they are, the skills that I've built. I don't always relate them back to past experiences that things that I've done and see them as such.
Well, and I think sometimes too, people look at this person has an associate's, a bachelor's, and then this person has a master's, doctorate, blah, blah, blah. And so they look at that. And I think that I have a master's, but I have to do my job. And then I have a license. So, you have to do post 2 years and all that to do this. At the end of the day, my knowledge basis comes from the people that I've talked to throughout all these years. They taught me, you know what I mean? And that's not something, but oftentimes what people are doing is sometimes they're looking for, does that person have a degree? It doesn't have to be a degree. There's so many other ways, certificates, work experience.
Exactly. It's a lot of times that life experience that can provide us with those skills that we need. And that's kind of what I think I'm saying. Like, even as far as there's a lot of times people didn't know that I have a degree or that kind of thing. And then they find out later and they're like, oh, I didn't even know you had that. Well, I mean, a lot of times I think I'm even dismissive of that in some ways where that I'm like, I have my degree in history government, but I don't really use that. But I did cultivate skills through that research and those kinds of things that have helped me, even in the development of our business and all of that.
And I think that's what it is, and we'll have those conversations because you will do that. You will minimize, and I'll be there like, "Wait a minute. You had to learn to do this and this for your degree, and how are you using it now?" But not only just that, you went and got your certificate, we're doing certificates in coaching.
Yeah.
You've read so many books now. But when you go to school, guess what? You're reading a book. In
Hmm.
essence, you are reading a book.
Yeah.
Somebody's just testing you on it. So for people out there, understand that your skill set's not measured by the degrees that you have all the time.
Yeah.
It is measured by your knowledge base. It is measured by your passion for whatever it is that you are doing. That's the true measurement.
Hmm.
But we will minimize ourselves. Oh, I only have this degree. And I hear my clients, oh, I only have an associate's degree. Well, honey, that's a start. Well, do you need more than that? And I was talking to one of my clients, and he's getting ready to graduate here in December. And he's contemplating, do I want a master's of that? I said, sit back, hold on. What is your passion? And if your passion is within the bachelor's degree, why would you go get a master's degree? But a lot of people, oh, you got to go get a master. You got to go. I said, no. I said, pause, wait.
Yeah.
See if what you're doing now, if it resonates in that. I said, because some people go on to get their master's degree, but once you get your master's degree, then you have to decide, what am I going to do with that master's degree?
Hmm.
It takes 2 years off, so you're not having 2 years of experience. In different jobs, they'll look at experience. You only see either bachelor's, master's degree, or 5 years of experience.
Hmm. Yeah, exactly. And I think a lot of times too, people look back and they see things as failures. And that's another thing that he addresses in the book is that you can't view it that way. What he calls them is temporary defeat. And through that, it is the seed for the next thing that maybe propels you to the success you're looking for.
And I've always called it just practice,
Yeah.
because once again, we're not failing in these things.
Hmm.
You just continue to practice. When you fail a test, you don't go sit there and say, "Oh, well, I'm done with that. I'm gonna leave this and never do that again." No, you realize, "Oh, crap, this is where I messed up. This is what I need to do. I was studying the wrong way, or I can do this," or whatever it is. It is information.
It's learning. Yep.
It's exactly. And when we start looking at these things as valuable information, and even if it's somebody who you really want to support you and they're being critical of you, or you're fearful of that criticism or judgment or whatever it is, listen to it and then, okay, well, why would they think that? Maybe it's because I'm shy and and so maybe it's I'm shy, so I have to work on how do I sell myself. You can switch those things up
Hmm.
and you can use them to help you in these endeavors.
Yeah.
But oftentimes we hear that criticism or whatever, and it's like you just see that person go from here and just shrink down.
Hmm.
And the reason why is because they're not switching it in their brain to asking the question, well, why do you think that? I just remember you from a kid and you never really followed through on stuff or whatever, or you would get really excited about stuff, but then, you didn't do it. And then you can sit there and say, why didn't I do? Oh, you know what? I didn't have the backing. I didn't have the education. I didn't. Then you can start using that to help propel you once again, using it
Exactly.
as a practice.
Use that criticism as a form of feedback to empower you to know where is it even within myself that maybe this is something I lack. Maybe this is something I can improve and help you on your journey.
And understand too, there can be cultural, social constructs that the people might say, we just don't do that in our culture, or we don't have those kind of careers, or society. Well, we're still looking at that glass ceiling with women. We really are. And once again, if the glass ceiling is there, whether we want to admit it or not, I don't know how one can't. But the thing is even with that, do you see women just sitting back? No, because
Mhm.
they're still working towards that glass ceiling, regardless of what society is saying.
Right.
And sometimes those criticisms are culturally based, gender based, society based, whatever that is. And if it is, then you can step back and say, whoa, then I'm going to be the first one in my culture, in my gender, in this social construct. I'm going to be the one to get past that. I'm going to excel. So
Yes.
you can use that as a motivation because sometimes it can be very negative.
Yeah.
You sense that when something's a negative comment or like a put down, then I say, follow it up with a question. Why do you think I'm not capable?
Mhm.
Why did you respond to me that way?
Yeah. I think that in doing that, it helps us to remain calm, keep the cool, because if you go to an emotional place when you hear somebody giving that criticism, you're not gonna reap the benefit of what you could learn from it.
And also, if they're saying it and you're having that strong emotional reaction, you got to sit down and say, why did I let that impact me?
Yeah.
What is my insecurity? What haven't I addressed?
Right.
What is that mindset that has the potential to get in my way?
Exactly.
Because when we're having that emotional thing, there's a mental block. There's something, whether it's historical, whatever we've created or somebody has said, done, whatever, it is there. And it is the thing that can have the potential to get in our way. So instead of thinking that way, have gratitude for those people, for their criticism, for their judgment, or whatever it is, because it's only going to make you better and stronger and more capable of meeting whatever those goals and desires are.
Yeah. Let it strengthen your determination.
Absolutely. Going back to the book, it is so fascinating to me that when you read something that was written so long ago, and the Waddle, his book,
Wallace Waddles, The Science of Getting Rich.
that is an older book.
Mhm.
But when you look at some of those things, particularly in this book, he's looking at change.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And when you're seeing these people who wrote this, and it's still so applicable today,
Mhm.
it's telling you that they have a perception of seeing something in the future.
Yeah.
It's more of almost like not a social, not a conscious awareness, but how would you describe it?
The awareness of the messages that we've received through society and that. It's interesting because even though this is a book that is about like a financial a way of viewing finances differently, he talks about the interpersonal part of it and what you have to do to work through all those ideas that we've subscribed to.
When you look at it, it was written right after the Depression.
Yeah.
So many people in the time of Depression, we had high suicide rates, we all sorts of stuff when the market crashed, and people thought this was the end of the world because everything that they thought about themselves was also tied into what they did. But when you have an interpersonal relationship and you realize that if this collapses, it's not me collapsing, it's finances. But the thing about money is money goes away and you can get it back. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So I think that interpersonal piece makes sense
Yeah.
because of all that, just where it took the mood of the United States at that time.
Mhm.
Just
All the things happening externally and our responses to it and how we could better ourselves through it.
there's going to always be external things, whether it's criticism, what goes on here, policy changes, this, that, or the other. It doesn't matter. These are all things that are so outside of our control. But what you often see is people invest a lot of more time into those things than they are into developing who am I? How do I be successful in all of these things?
Mhm. Even in the face of adversity.
Exactly. And that's why for us, our coaching is so important because it is about that mental mindset
Yeah.
to be in that best place possible, to be as successful as you can be.
That's one of the things I love about being a mindset coach is helping people to change their perspective no matter what their endeavor, to understand that it is within their power to do whatever it is they want to do.
And understand that for all of us, there are obstacles. There
Yeah.
are, and the obstacles, a majority of our obstacles, I promise you, are not external to us. They are this internal dialogue that we have.
Yeah.
A lot of people, well, I can't do it because I can't get the financing. That becomes the thing. but never once do they look for an option to the financing because sometimes it's fear. And oftentimes that underlying thing of success is fear.
Mhm.
And so if you don't address that fear, it's going to rear its ugly head no matter where you're at in this progression to reaching that goal, whether it's relationship, business, education, it doesn't matter what it is.
Right.
And so really working on how to identify that. If that's hard for a lot of people because it's not right up here in front of us. We don't see it that way.
It's really hard to get comfortable with the unknown, but that's really the place that you have to be.
And it's through practice.
Yep.
Even when you don't feel like you have that support of your family and friends, and you're going out, that becomes the unknown. I'm going to go out and I'm going to do this without those people that I really feel I thought were going to be supportive of or whatever. And they might not be for whatever reasons. It doesn't matter.
Mhm.
But what happens is when we let that dictate or deter us from what we're doing, then once again, that's something internal that we have to look at.
Yeah, exactly. And we may not know all the aspects of everything that needs to be done to even bring this dream to life. But that's the thing about creating that group and finding those people that do know how to do those different things so that they can contribute. Having those mentors and people in our lives that have done it before and they know how to do this or that, even if it's only one portion of it. I mean, we've had to learn that. I've had to learn a lot of things on my own as far as like how technology works or things like that. But we have so many resources now. Like you're always telling me, go to YouTube, look at YouTube. They tell you how to do everything. Stuff like that.
Google, YouTube, there are so many
Yeah.
things, AI, all of these technologies that we're using. As you were saying, you're right. You have to have, there's a team. But my thing is stop making your team the naysayers.
Right.
And how many times we will do that and put what will make us happy, what will help us grow, being that authentic self, we will put that on the back burner in order to be in the presence of the naysayers.
Yeah.
And the truth of the matter is, you can still have those relationships, but you just modify them and change them.
Hmm.
What you do is you go create the cheerleaders, the mentors, those people who see you and your vision and help propel you to that place.
And the way that you have to do that is you have to start talking to those people and
Yeah, called
finding,
networking. No.
yeah, finding those people that have already gone before you and done these things so that you can make the connections you need.
One of the things I'm always saying is please do not reinvent the wheel.
Hmm.
When I say that and people are asking me, oh, about if they want to start a new podcast or they're thinking, I'm going to do a podcast. Oh, okay. Well, then you do this, this, and this. And they're looking at you like, why are you telling me all this? Aren't you afraid of what? This is not competition, people.
Hmm.
And if I'm so insecure, then I shouldn't be doing what I'm doing. But stop reinventing the wheel. Find those mentors. Step out of your comfort zone. Talk to them.
Hmm.
Reach out. You might get 5 no's, but hey, you only need that one yes. And that's what we always say. You only need that one yes.
Yeah. And from the beginning, we have always used the gratitude statement. We're grateful for all the yeses we get.
Absolutely. And we have been so blessed in the fact that we have gotten many yeses. We have gotten
More yeses
the
than no's.
Really. I don't even know if we've really gotten no's, maybe 1 or 2
A
no's.
couple of no's, but yeah.
But other than that, no. And that's the thing. And you're sitting there thinking, oh man, I put this out. What if they say no? And they say no. And we learn not to let that impact us.
And maybe you don't get a response at all. As far as we've had guests on in the past, and I have reached out to some several times, and I will continue to do it, in hopes that we will eventually get a response.
And that's what you do. When you're doing this kind of business, it's so different than anything that I do. And the reason I say that is as a therapist, my clients find me. I don't go out and solicit for clients.
Yeah.
I don't. I am grateful. I am just immensely grateful for that. Here, we have to sell ourselves in a different way. As a therapist, because I've been doing it so long, you kind of get a reputation within the thing, and then people will refer and stuff like that. So I don't have a problem with referral source or anything.
Right.
And once again, it's because of my consistency and stuff like that. With podcasting, with our YouTube channel, with our coaching, with the coloring books. These are all things that we have to go out and promote and stuff, and it's a very different thing. It's not something that's in our wheelhouse right now.
Mm. It is becoming.
It is.
Yeah. And so it takes adjusting, and it is all in your mind. All of the adjustments that need to be made is about you gaining that confidence that you need.
And sometimes it makes it easier when you have your tribe, when you have your group that are there and they can see that vision with you. And sometimes it's talking to people even that you don't really know that well or whatever, because sometimes things resonate with them and they become part of that.
Yeah. And most plans cannot be carried out alone. There are other players that
Mhm.
have to come along and help in the process.
So, I guess the thing for today is realizing that there's going to be criticism and judgment sometimes. And if you feel that, switch it in your brain to, oh, this is constructive. What are you seeing? Because if you're seeing it, then I can help change it. Do you see what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
So, and understand that sometimes because of norms or whatever, people don't know how to react and respond because they're so used to what they're used to. So, not taking it personally and realizing that find your tribe, create your group. Understand you don't have to do any of these things on your own.
Mm-hmm.
Find those people that it's going to resonate with, bring them on board.
Yeah, and the other thing that you have to realize is that some of the people that you talk about, friends or family or whatever, that have known you for years and years, and maybe sometimes they only have the perception of the person that you were years ago, and you are not the same person today.
Exactly.
So they're basing these ideas off of the old you.
Exactly. And sometimes you're basing your idea of you off of the old you.
Yeah.
So listen to those things. Don't take things personally. If it's creating an emotion in you, then there might be a mental block in there.
Yeah.
Okay. So hopefully this resonates with you, and remembering that stuff from the 1930s is still relevant today. And sometimes we have to go back and look at older stuff and see how much of that's played out. And it helps us in our journey forward too. So looking for those resources
Yep.
through books, use YouTube, use the things that you have to in order to help you be that successful version of who you are.
Yeah.
And as always, we are so grateful for everybody that joins us. And to find us,
You can go to twogirlsinapod.com and subscribe, and you'll receive an email whenever we upload a new podcast episode. You can listen to the podcast wherever you get your podcast, and we are on social media, Instagram and Facebook, under Two Girls in a Pod Life's Journey. We would love for you to follow us. You can send us a message if you've got ideas about topics you'd like to hear about. We love any feedback. And Adventures of Two Girls in a Pod Life's Journey on YouTube. And you can go on there and subscribe. We have several different things on there. You can see, view the coloring books. Sharon has some mixology. She has a little section called Sip and Savor.
because I like to mix things up.
Yeah.
And to our coloring books, you can find on Amazon under Sharon Abeta, Abeyta, and Christy Banta, Banta. We appreciate all the support. If you are out there listening, one of the ways that I'm learning all this stuff because we're doing all this marketing, networking stuff, and I talk to people, so I get ideas. If you're listening, tell 5 of your friends to maybe listen or to buy the coloring books or whatever, any of our stuff. And then have each one of them tell 5 friends. And even if we get one, that's still 2 new people that we didn't have before.
Yeah.
Okay.
Expand your reach.
Yes. But anyway, as always, we appreciate you and we are so happy to share our thoughts and ideas with you. And we love when people share their thoughts and ideas with us. And we will be back next
Next
week.
week.
It is the holiday.
Well, not next week.
Oh, I don't even know where we're at on this. Yes, it is. This week, this is Monday. We have this week. Next week is Thanksgiving.
27th this year.
Yeah, so yeah, it is here. See, she's behind. It's usually the other way around. Anyway, we will be back next week with an episode. And you know what? You guys have a wonderful, wonderful week. And subscribe, follow. Send those little happy faces or thumbs up or whatever it is that y'all do. We appreciate it. Bye.
Bye.